This week, I'm chatting with Shelly about the moment she became a caregiver to her partner, Steve. We talk about the importance of therapy, wellness, and self-care for caregivers, and Shelly shares how they've adapted their lives by going back to basics and living in the moment. I'm your host, Dashanka, and you're listening to That Was the Moment I Knew Our Lives Separately and Collectively Would Change Forever. My guest today is Shelly. Shelly is a former non-profit professional turned caregiver overnight. Her mission is to empower and inspire women to embrace their life transitions as opportunities for wellness, growth, and self-discovery. Committed to honesty, integrity, and authenticity, Shelly leads by example, showing that it's never too late to live a life you love. So lovely to have you here, Shelly.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Why don't you tell me about what life was like before your moment?
Well, I live with my partner, Steve. We've been together for 12 years now, and we were very active people. I worked full-time as a director of development in a not-for-profit, and Steve was retired, and he very active. He walked 12,000 steps a day. He was actually what he calls a house husband. So I worked. He did the laundry, he did the shopping, the apartment cleaning, all that stuff. So for domestic life. But we were also very active. We traveled a lot. We went to the Gulf every year, down south here in Gulf Shores in Alabama. We took big long trips in the summertime, went to Colorado. We did a lot of weekend getaways for live music, spent a lot of time with friends. So we were like very, very active. And I was very active in my job, obviously, him being a house husband. So, that was basically our life. We had a fun life. We had a good life. Did lots of things together with our friends and everything. That was pretty much what we did before what happened. So
why don't you take us to the moment?
Well, it actually started on Sunday afternoon, about 2:00 in the afternoon. Steve started feeling this weird feeling at the bottom of his feet. And we really didn't think much of it. Maybe his foot had fallen asleep or whatever. So we went about our afternoon, and then about 5:00 or 5:30, he put on his shoes to go walk in the apartment complex because he calls his dad every day at 5:30. His dad's 98 years old. So he calls his dad every day. Yes. Good. He's a great son. But he cut his walk short and came back and said, "There's something wrong. The feeling's starting to go up my legs." And I remember this really odd memory of I made a strawberry rhubarb pie, and I don't think we got to eat any of it. So, for some reason that just sticks in my head because I said, "Well, you're walking really funny. We need to get you to the emergency room." So we got him to the emergency room, and 12 hours later, he was paralyzed from the waist down. Yeah, it was very, very sudden that this happened.
Wow, that's quite shocking.
Initially, he was diagnosed with acute idiopathic transverse myelitis. It's a very rare chronic condition. There's like 1,300 cases here in the States. And I know that there are other cases abroad as well, but only 1,300 here. Luckily, we live in a community that has 2 Trauma 1 hospitals, so they got right on it with treatments. They thought he had Guillain-Barré at first. And when they put him in an MRI, they figured out it was transverse myelitis. So they just got treatment on him immediately. So I think that that's really aided in his recovery. So that's eventually what he was diagnosed with.
And so what's the kind of, because I've never heard of that, and I'm sure a lot of people listening probably haven't either. Is there a cause? Is there a reason? And I guess what's the therapy or the recovery from this? Do you recover from it?
Transverse myelitis, it can be caused by several things. A lot of times it is idiopathic because you can't really pinpoint the cause. That bacterial infection, viral infection, Lyme disease, Epstein-Barr virus reactivation, West Nile. So something is in your body, and instead of your body going to that specific thing to take care of it, it creates a lesion on your spine, attacks your spinal cord, which is really bizarre. And for some people, it's very gradual. Like it could happen over days and weeks. But Steve was acute, which means, like I said, within 12 hours, he was paralyzed from the waist down. And the treatments that they started him on, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not really sure what all these entail, but hopefully someone listening will know. But they started him on IVG, which is antibodies. Then they put him on 3 days of IV steroids. That was not fun. And then they did 5 treatments, plasma transfer. So they did 5 treatments of that. So 20% went out, plasma went out, and 20% of new plasma came in. He jokes about how he got an oil change, over 5 days, over 5 treatments every other day. So after 2 or 3 days, he was able to move a finger. He started moving his hand. I stayed with him in the hospital. He was in the hospital neural ward for 15 days because he couldn't move. He couldn't press the call button. He couldn't feed himself. I'm like feeding this full-grown man. But by the time he left the hospital to go to inpatient therapy, he was in a wheelchair. He could get up. He got in a wheelchair, and so he spent a month in inpatient therapy where he had occupational and physical therapy at least 4 to 5 hours a day for a month. And so by the time he left inpatient, he was walking in a walker. So if you read the research, which I think is a bit outdated, but what they say is a third of people never recover. A third people will partially recover, where Steve is now. But he can walk with a cane and he can walk unaided, although I don't allow him to walk unaided in public because it's very janky and it worries me. He's still on catheter because of the feeling below his waist, obviously, is still, starting to come back. He has a lot of muscle spasms in his legs, still a lot of pain. And then he's partially recovered. And then some people fully recover. A third of people fully recover. It takes a lot of hard work with physical and occupational therapy to be able to get, just hand movements again and being able to walk. So that's what he did. And then he was also in outpatient therapy for several months as well.
That must have really just turned your lives upside down. From the sounds of Steve, it sounds like he is quite a doer.
Yes.
And he likes to be the one that takes care of people.
Yeah.
Just from what you've described already. That's the kind of image I'm getting of Steve.
Yeah. It's kind of cliche to say our life changed in a moment. So I say our life changed in 12 hours. But when I think back to it, it's like I said earlier, I'm like, did we eat some of that strawberry reform pie? It's like a blur, because things happened so, even though it was 12 hours, it seemed very quick because they moved him from the emergency room to critical decision unit, which is really just, waiting for a room to open up on the neural ward was basically what it was. So I went home, I grabbed some stuff because I knew we were in it for the long haul because by then he wasn't walking anymore at all. And I came back and he was thrashing on the bed. He had no control over his arms or his legs. He was just knocking stuff off, and he was incoherent, didn't know what was happening to him. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? We found a nurse, and that's when they got the ball rolling on medication to keep him from the spasms. When I look back on it, it's just so surreal because I'm thinking it just happened. And then you go to the hospital for 2 weeks and that just happened, and you just get people who suffer trauma do this. It's fight, flight, or freeze. So it's kind of like you're frozen in that moment of not knowing what to do, yet doing everything. If that makes any sense. It's a weird place to be. So just trying to get day to day without really knowing what was going to happen. You're just in survival mode for many, many days. And then when we came home, one of the things that Steve and I talk about a lot after this happened was our moments now. Because it affected his life, it affected my life, it affected our life collectively. So we have these moments, and this is our moment now. Steve's never going to be the same, ever. I'm never going to be the same. So what does our life look like now? What's the moment that we live in now? What life can we create now? So that's sort of where we are at the moment with all that. I'm not saying we don't have our ups and downs, because we do.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. And to be honest, shouldn't we always be looking at our lives in that way, living in the now? in this moment. That's a beautiful, beautiful outlook. But as you mentioned, that's a lot of trauma, and for both of you, and separately and together. Have you been doing anything to work through that trauma? Have you been seeing anyone, talking to anyone? It sounds like a huge life adjustment. And like you said, your life's never going to be the same again. How have you been dealing with that trauma?
I like to think I'm dealing with it pretty well. I don't know if it's just like this I am on, but I am starting therapy because I have a lot of anxiety around things that I need to learn so that I'm not become physically incapacitated. Because one of the things I've noticed is the stress and anxiety is causing a lot of physical pain I've never had before. I mean, it's just crazy, the physical pain I have. And so I've been doing a lot of research, and a lot of stress and anxiety, especially heaped on you in a short amount of time, will cause a lot of physical pain. So thinking with therapy, I can lessen some of that anxiety and these irrational fears I have. But I'm really lucky in that Steve is a great partner. Like, we can have these really deep conversations about how my trauma, as some people would see not as bad as his, does not negate his trauma. So I can tell Steve, I'm really feeling anxious. I'm worried. I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling all these things. I could tell him that because, like I said, my trauma does not negate his. It's my own trauma. Yeah. So that's been so helpful to me. I can't express how helpful being able to talk to Steve about what we're both going through has really helped both of us. So I'm so fortunate. I just feel so lucky with being able to do that. And then I started a podcast, and I'm talking to other people about what I'm going through because I just think it's so important. It's an outlet for me. I can use my strengths. And I'm super curious about other people and what other people are doing. So that's been a really good outlet for me.
On the second episode of That Was the Moment, I interviewed a woman called Felicity, who at 17 or 18 was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. And one of the pieces of advice that she was given, and she now passes it on to others, is grieve for your body, grieve for the life that you used to have, because it's okay to feel like this sucks. It's okay to feel like, why did this happen? Years on, she still grieves for her body because she knows that her body can't do what she would like it to do. She can't always do what she wants to do. But it's okay to be sad about it, right? You don't have to put on this, like, it's fine, positive attitude, because it's not fine.
Thank you for saying that, because that is so true. Even we do reminisce. Like, we missed our annual month-long trip to Gulf Shores, and we probably won't be able to go this December. We missed a music festival we've been going to since 2011. So we can say, I'm really sorry I missed that. Last year was so much fun. We did this, we did that. And then we know that, well, we didn't do it this year, and that's okay. So I really appreciate you saying that, because I think a lot of times is that we're seen as, especially Steve and caregivers to some extent, we're seen as an inspiration. And I don't know if I really like that, because I want to empower people. I mean, I think it's good to be inspired, but then if I'm an inspiration to someone, I feel like I have to put on this way of acting all the time. Like, I can't have a bad day. I can't have these things. Although I'm really honest, I will go on Facebook and be like, today it really sucks. I will be really honest about what I'm going through. But I totally agree with what you're saying, that we do need to grieve what we've lost. And that's okay to do that. That's okay to do that.
And also now, I guess, finding a new way of living and enjoying, because and this is another thing Felicity said, is, after the grieving, just remember you have to stop. And you still have a life that's worth living. So get on with it, And so what are some new things that you're doing now that perhaps you wouldn't have done in the past?
Well, we're having more people over to the apartment for dinner, so we're doing that. Negotiating things with Steve is difficult now. He's still on a catheter. He has a leg bag, and he can walk with a cane, but we just it's difficult to figure out what we can navigate now outside the apartment.
Yeah.
So we're having friends over for dinner more often. We have gone out to see music. He has done that. Saturday night, unless Steve is sick, because with transverse myelitis, if you get even a cold, it just slams your body and it takes forever to get over. So he's just getting over a cold. But when he's not sick and he's able to walk without a tremendous amount of pain, we go down, get our mail, and then we walk to the garden. We have some garden boxes here. And he planted tomatoes and broccoli and all that with me this year. So we go inspect the garden, and then we take a little walk, and then we come back. So that's been a really fun moment. That's something we used to not do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it may be seemingly simple, but it's a moment that we can have a few moments together. Steve gets out of the apartment, he gets some sunshine, we go down and we make fun of all the junk mail we got and all that. So we did go to a restaurant for the first time in 8 months. We had some friends out, and I felt safe comfortable going out with a restaurant with Tom to help in case something happened to Steve. Or just really trying to navigate Steve's walking, being on a catheter, and various other physical things that have come with transverse myelitis.
I think it's interesting that you just said you feel safe. It obviously sounds super scary. And being on your own with Steve, do you feel like a great responsibility?
Yes. And it's a little less now, but he was under 24-hour care for a month or more, even for a long time. And when he was an inpatient, I didn't stay there. I actually came home and slept. I was here during the day. And then he's got nurses that are doing catheter care, people helping him shower, people giving him his meds. They draw blood all the time to make sure everything's functioning. And all of a sudden, he comes home. And it was really scary for him, too, because we had to sort out pills, and I had to do catheter care. And I was like terrified the first couple of times I did that. Like, what if I pull it too hard? Or what if I don't clean it well enough, which I've been doing a great job. But all these things that we have to do now. And so it was really scary for him. And like, well, how are you going to sleep? What are we going to, I mean, it was just all these things. I was so worried, and I hovered all the time. And when he first came home, he had to be with a walker, and I still had to hold his gait belt. So whenever he went somewhere into the bathroom, I had to go to the bathroom with him. Well, not with him, but you know what I mean, get him into the bathroom. So yeah, it was pretty scary. But now I'm feeling more confident in both our roles. Like, he's in there right now by himself. And I can take off for a couple hours and go do something. And I feel fine with him walking around the apartment as long as he's got his phone in his pocket. That's okay. I'm feeling a little better. Yeah. Trying to convince you I feel a little better. But it's mostly letting go and knowing Steve can do these things. And we know what to do if he falls. And we know what to do if this happens. Yeah. So I feel a little safer now. But it's still kind of troublesome for me. It's getting better.
But it sounds like you're creating this new life that you've adapted.
Yeah.
To this new life, and trying to make the best choices that work for both of you.
Yeah. We're not nearly as active as we used to be. Like, we would just be, hey, there's music going on tonight on Wednesday. We should go to Lindbergh's and do that. I've been baking a lot. I baked a lot of like cranberry cakes and things like that. But it's affording us more opportunities to just to read, to binge watch our favorite shows like the British Bake Off and, things like that. Yeah, I love that show too. Steve has a blog. And another thing that happens, he and my daughter write letters back and forth to each other. She lives in Wichita. So they're writing letters back and forth to each other. He talks to people on the phone more. So there's been a lot of changes, but then also, like you said, we've been able to create a different life that I know will just get better as we feel more comfortable getting out in public and things like that, doing more things. So we tried to take, Steve can't be in a car for very long. So we did taking trips away, like an hour and a half from the house, just Airbnbs, like on the lake and some secluded places that aren't too far as like little mini trips. So we are doing some of those things. It's just, I'm just figuring out, other things that we can do that are going to be safe for him,
Mhm.
not make me feel terrified.
It seems like you've kind of almost gone back to basics in a way. Like things that we don't do anymore, like writing letters. Like I can't remember the last time I wrote an actual letter. Even walking through the garden and looking at the plants, it's appreciating the small things again,
Exactly.
which we take for granted.
Exactly. And I was telling someone that the other day, like, it really is about getting back to basics. So one of the things that Steve and I did when he came home was I said, our eating is going to change drastically. And we just got back to basics. Just home cooked, lots of vegetables. We're not much big meat eaters anyway, but making sure that you get good quality food so we don't ramp up your inflammation any more than it already is. And then just walking. Steve still can walk. He doesn't do 12,000 steps a day anymore, but we can walk. We can get up and we can walk. That is just really getting back to basics. And at first, we were both a little sad, like I said earlier, about not being able to do some of the things that we do. But I am getting better at being content with where we are. Now, I'm not going to speak for Steve, but in terms of the rhythm and the routine and the things that we've fallen into, I'm feeling a lot better, about a little more content. Minus the anxiety with my life.
I guess that's where the therapy comes into it, and that's where a therapist will help in talking about it and moving through that trauma, through that grief, through all the different emotions that you must be feeling.
Yeah. And I think so too, because we'll take one step forward and 3 steps back. Something will happen. So learning to navigate those things and not staying in the funk that we get in when those things happen, and just more anxiety created. So I think it's very helpful for caregivers to be in therapy if they can, because then you can tell your story to somebody else. My friends are always asking about Steve, but I'm really tired of talking about Steve to my friends. I want to be Shelly. I don't want to be Steve's caregiver. I just want to be Shelly. So with a therapist or being a guest on podcasts, I can tell my story so others can relate, and then I can just go be Shelly in the other aspects of my life. So that feels really good. And I think that's going to be very helpful for me.
Yeah. Yeah, because I guess I did it in the intro. A bit of your identity has changed now.
I've been in the not-for-profit world for a long time, and I was actually fired from my job when Steve was in the hospital. So that was a bit of I was fired from my job, and then they contested my unemployment. So I was denied unemployment. So that was sort of a blow professionally for me to be fired in such a way during a really vulnerable time of my life. It probably took me a good 6 months or so to think, well, I'm not a director of development anymore, and do I want to be that anymore? So in a way it's good, because I'm thinking I don't want to go back to that. To your point of my identity has changed, it's just another, what we talked about earlier. That's okay. That's not my identity anymore. But I still have a lot of knowledge and wisdom and skills and stuff that I learned during those days that I can now move forward into my new identity. Will it be a podcaster? I don't know, maybe. Will I be an author? I don't know, maybe. So the good thing is, now that's why I talk about women during transitions. You can use this time. What are your skills? Keep a growth mindset. Get back to basics with your habits. What are your core values that you can lean into? That during transitions, that can be your new identity. That can be, you don't have to stay the same all the time. I am not the Shelly I was before Steve got sick. And I don't know that it would serve me to be that Shelly, because my life is different. I've got to move forward. As Steve and I are moving forward into a different life, I have to move forward into a different life as well. So that's what I'm about to say. Transitions can be so powerful if you let them. They suck. Don't get me wrong. They suck. They're scary. They're hard. They're fearful. It's hard going into the unknown, but use that transition for good. Stay with it. Use it for good. And I promise you, on the other side, you're going to come out even better. That's what I tell them all the time.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. And I also think that we concentrate so much on endings without realizing that endings actually are new beginnings. We get so focused on, oh my God, that's ended. My life has ended. But when something ends, that's the opportunity for the new.
Yes.
And whatever that new is. And I think that's the scary bit, right? Because you're safe in that knowing, in this place of, okay, what's coming up next? Because this is all new, this is all unknown, scary, and your brain automatically goes fight, flight, freeze.
Exactly.
But I think if we can just sit with the fact that new beginnings means growth, new opportunities, and kind of work through it in that respect.
Steve, I joked a lot
before this about the heavy inertia we had. We were very comfortable in what we were doing. Probably sometimes maybe a little uncomfortable. And a perfect simple example is we had an old janky couch that really belonged in a college dorm. Oh, we loved that couch. We loved that couch, but it was old. It was stained. It was just like, it looked like we were poor, didn't have any money.
So when Steve got sick, I'm like,
we're going to buy a new couch. We're going to buy a new couch and a new chair.
But, that's just a small example, like you were talking about. We just get comfortable. It's just heavy inertia that we get. And sometimes it takes that. It's unfortunate, but sometimes it takes a moment, that moment that happens to make you see that, maybe I can do something different, or maybe I can, have something different in life, even though it's not going to be the same. So, but my heavy inertia is over.
Okay. I bet that new couch is so comfy.
That new couch is
and
lovely.
You're like, why didn't I do this 20 years ago?
It's funny because, I'll be sitting there and I'll be like, do you still love our new couch? Well, I missed the old one. I really loved the old one, but I love the new one too. It's all more ridiculous sometimes.
Tell me a little bit about your podcast.
Well, it's called Empower Her Wellness. Not done very many episodes yet, but it really started off as thinking about mental wellness and self-care. So, like, one of the things I found out with Steve's illness is just the systemic problems with caregiver support. I was denied employment. I live in Missouri here in the States. I tried to get the $500 shared care tax credit, and I'd only been a caregiver for 4 months instead of 6. Steve's on Medicare here, which is the national insurance for people over 65 here in the States. And if he's in outpatient therapy, which he is, he can't get in-home health care paid by Medicare. And I couldn't get the family medical leave because Steve and I aren't married. So all these, systemic issues that really, here in the States, that really are barriers for unpaid caregivers. Unpaid caregivers save the government and our health insurance companies billions of dollars every year because they don't get paid to do this, which is okay. So it started off like thinking about that and like how yoga and meditation is not going to get me out of my financial situation as a caregiver. I cannot yoga myself out of that. I love yoga. Don't get me wrong. It's great. So I was really wanting to empower women that have gone through transitions to look at themselves, changing themselves with their core values, or not necessarily changing themselves, but leaning into their core values, their strengths, setting some goals, and then go on and talking to other people about making changes, whether with themselves or systems. So that's really where it started. And then I just had people contacting me. So it's going to be a hodgepodge of real wellness as opposed to just being told to take a bubble bath. Because for caregivers, as much as I like yoga, it's like, oh, that's another thing I got to go do. And do I want to do that, or do I want to sit in my papasan chair and drink coffee and read? Which is a better mental wellness activity for me. And so other people start contacting me. And so it's become a hodgepodge of that, mental wellness, self-care, and then looking at stories from other caregivers and women in transition. So it's sort of a hodgepodge right now, which I'm okay with. But I do love talking to women who've gone through transitions and some of the things that they've done to make changes within themselves and systems. So that's probably where I'm going to be moving into.
That's amazing. And I'm going to be putting all your details in the show notes as well so people can find you.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to someone who may be going through a transition or has a partner or a loved one that is going through something major? What advice would you give them?
Well, you can only do what you can do. You know, that old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You can encourage your loved one as much as you possibly can, but ultimately, you've got to take care of yourself. You've got to figure out ways to, keep your mental wellness good, keep your physical wellness good, and just know that the moment that you're in, it's okay. Because you can take that moment and you can create a different life. But, one of the things that I tried so hard when Steve came home was, like I said, I just hovered over him. I just hovered over him all the time. And I neglected my sleep, my own eating, my going out with friends or doing the things that I liked until I think we probably had a conversation. And I said, I'm going to start taking care of myself now. And of course, he's okay with that. So I guess you would say, take care of yourself first. It's not selfish. I had a guest on my podcast that said she becomes self-full, SELFUL, after her son was murdered. And she said, no, became my best friend. She set some boundaries around what she needed. So it's hard. And I don't have a magic pill for anybody or any certain steps that you have to take. But my advice would be find a way to take care of yourself first. And then all those other things are obviously going to be so much easier for you.
Yeah, that's really wonderful advice. And your cup has to be full before you can fill someone else's. Definitely.
And I know it's really cliched and trite, and I don't want people to think, well, I could just go to yoga and meditation, bubble baths, and fill my cup. No, you can't do that. It's a combination of therapy or like my therapy was baking and cleaning my kitchen before Steve came home. That's what I did. So you can figure out those things that are going to help your mental wellness and just help you get through the day with these things. The thing I would say too is take care of your physical health, eat well, try and get the best sleep that you can, do some exercise every day, create some mental wellness. I could talk about my pop sun chair and reading or just sitting on my balcony listening to the birds. And like you said, walking in nature, those I think are really the baseline physical well-being, and then you can just build other things on top of that, because I know when I eat crap, then I feel like crap.
If you could be remembered by one word, what would that word be?
I would say authentic.
And what does authentic mean to you?
Well, for a long time, I was being what everyone else wanted me to be, and I no longer do that. So I say things like, that people don't always like to hear. I like to be really honest about what I'm feeling and what I'm going through. I don't like to sugarcoat things anymore. But that doesn't mean, authentic doesn't mean being a jerk either. Being like, oh, well, that's just me. I'm just authentic. But I would like to say authentic, because one of the things I like to tell women is you can start living the life you want to live. You can truly start doing that. But it starts with you figuring out who you want to be and what you want to do and how you want to do it. So for me, I would say authentic.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation today, and I hope that it empowers someone out there listening who is maybe a caregiver of some sort or going through a transition. It sounds like you're doing an amazing job, and Steve's very lucky to have someone like you in his corner.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I hope today's conversation empowers you and inspires you to know that no matter your current situation, your life can change too. All it takes is a moment. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and share it with a friend. And if you would like to support the podcast, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/thatwasthemoment. Until next time, be present in each moment, because you never know when your moment will come, or when you have the gift of being a moment for someone else. Take care.